Hello everyone, you're listening to Let's Get Rocked with presenter Victor Rouă. Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Get Rocked, the independent rock podcast with your presenter Victor Rouă. And right now we are here with Folkal Point, a great folk band from Bristol, England. And for the first question of this interview, I would like to ask them, what can you tell us about your musical influences and what were they in the first place to begin with? Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay, Victor. Well, I think, like most people, we've got older brothers or family members, and you tend to take a lot of influence from those older generations, and whether it's pop music or folk music, that kind of thing. And I know from my personal point of view, I had older cousins, and whenever there were family gatherings, I was the sort of youngster, and I was kind of not forced, but encouraged to listen to their musical tastes, which was fine. And I know that Mark, one of the other band members, he had an older brother that played the guitar, sort of kind of skiffle type stuff.
Local cuisine, as Jimmy Page said, local cuisine for England at the time.
Yeah. And he also had an uncle that sang and played old style kind of music, kind of American music, and cowboy songs, that kind of thing. And I know that Cherie was listening to sort of pop music and stuff like that at the time. So all in all, I could, it was probably the folk and blues revival of the 1960s.
Indeed.
Probably grabbed our attention,
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. And for our listeners, I would like to introduce yourselves now, so so they would know as well the co-frontman, right, of Folkal Point. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So my name's Stuart Amesbury, and I play guitar and I sing. I sort of lead the band in that sense. I've got Cherie with me. She'll speak in a moment. The other two that are not with us here because they live away from Bristol are Mark Steed, who he had his name spelt incorrectly. In fact, he was given another name. It said Martin. And we've never forgiven the record company for that.
Okay, so it was a mistake on behalf of the record. With respect to his name.
It says Martin Steed, but it should be Mark Steed.
Yeah.
So
shame on them.
He played guitar and banjo, that kind of thing. And the last member was Paul Cook, who again played guitar and bass.
All right.
And Cherie, by the side of me, I'll let her introduce herself right now.
Hi, my name's Cherie Musialik. Hello, Victor, and hello, everyone listening out there.
Hello, thank you very much as well for your music. And now we're going to the second question of this interview. More specifically, when did you decide to go professional music and why? That's an individual question for each group member present. Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is one of those things where Cherie and I kind of developed on from the original folk band, and we went professional around about 1978. But by that time, Folkal Point had kind of fractured somewhat, and the other two, whilst they maintained some interest in music, they never really played in bands professionally beyond that. Mark actually ended up working for a luthier and a guitar shop.
That's brilliant.
So that was his kind of stability within music.
And liaison, long-time liaison with music.
Yeah. But Paul drifted away completely from professional music.
I see.
Cherie and I had a career after Folkal Point in various rock bands, and really, there's been a coming together of Folkal Point in recent times for a reunion concert, which was really, really good and brought back a lot of fond memories, you know. But,
Absolutely.
So Cherie and I have been professional since the late 1970s. We've always been associated with music.
That's brilliant. And when Folkal Point sort of fractured, as you pointed out yourself, during the late 1970s, was that during the late 1970s approximately?
No, it would have been by the
mid 1970s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you have to recall. We were actually at school at the time when all of the recording was done, and you know, and it was that sort of thing.
Yeah, you were teenagers, right? You were teenagers at the time.
Yeah.
Very young, very young.
Teenagers.
Yeah. Brilliant talent for teenagers, and indeed a very proficient and professional way of doing music at such an early age. So sincere congratulations for your self-titled debut album.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned the fact that you and the lead vocalist sort of were associated after the Folkal Point fractured, were you part of the same rock bands, or were you actually apart, each in another rock band?
No. We were in the same bands together all the time. Yeah.
Okay, I see. Good. Because I was thinking maybe it was sort of like one was in a particular band and then the other was in another, and then you collaborated together, band with band, something like that. But thank you very much for shedding light on that question, previous question. And now we're going to the third question of this interview, which is the following one. What is the story behind the name of the band? Why necessarily Folkal Point? It's a brilliant play on words, by the way. Sincere congratulations for it. Thank you.
Right, yeah. That again, this is quite a good little story, I think, for you. That the band were formed really for a school concert, and of course we didn't have a name at all. It was three guys that were playing guitars and stringed instruments. None of us actually being proficient singers, and we were placed with a singer by our kind of music teacher at the school, and which was Cherie. And at the same time, Mark's mum commented, his mother commented about the boys being the musicians, if you like, playing the tunes, but Cherie would be the focal point, meaning,
oh, I see.
The focus of attention.
Oh, I see. That's so beautiful.
That sounded like a good name.
That's so beautiful. So the name of the band actually stems from the lead vocalist, which is Cherie, right?
Well, yeah, only in as much as Mark's mother thought that she was the focal point of the band.
Okay, I see. Wonderful influence. Absolutely wonderful influence and lovely story.
Yeah, we thought that was great, and then we changed the spelling of the word focal, so that it reflected the musical style.
Exactly, the genre of music you were playing, which is folk, of course. Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. That's very, very intelligent. That's very witty. Thank you very much for your explanations. And now here's the fourth question. Kindly tell us the story of your debut self-titled studio album, where it was recording, the recording process, the influences and inspiration for the songs on the record as a whole. When was it actually released? This is another important question, because some sources on the internet credit it being released in 1971, whereas others in 1972. So various sources on the internet differ, hence for many new fans out there, including myself of course, a little bit of chronological clarity would be very much welcome indeed. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay, so at the time we'd been at school, and we used to get some time off of school to go to a local radio station, BBC Radio Bristol, and we'd recorded a lot of stuff for them, and we'd play live on air on the drive time kind of shows, and we'd actually had quite a good repertoire of music. Anyway, something from the BBC was sent to London. BBC in Bristol sent to London, and this guy Alan Green was on this show in London, which was a weekly folk show, and he kind of liked what he heard, and then got in touch with us in a kind of a roundabout way, because we were in Bristol, and Alan Green's home base was in the northwest of England, in the sort of Manchester area.
I see.
And anyway, cut a long story short, we were asked to go and record at his studio, which was kind of a home-based studio in a place called Cheadle Hulme, which is in Cheshire, and it's on the outskirts of Manchester. And the way that it was recorded was to analog tape, magnetic tape, and it was as though we were playing live. So it was complete performances of songs. And as I said, we had a wide repertoire at the time, and so we were sort of mixing between traditional British folk songs and maybe contemporaneous songs, Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So we actually recorded more tracks than were on the album. That was just the way that it was done. And so there were no overdubs. Everything was a complete performance.
Great.
Both the playing and the singing.
How many sessions were there needed for the entire recording process? Was it just in one setting, in just one session, just one performance?
Well, it was spread over a weekend.
Oh, I see.
So it was over a couple of days really, but we worked sort of fairly long hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
That kind of thing. And I recall we actually travelled up there on a train. From Bristol, we had to make a change somewhere. It was all a big experience for us because we were kids,
Indeed.
But going back to that date thing, well, the album was released in 1972, and it actually, says that on the record label, 1972. I guess that the recordings would have been done at the back end of 1971.
Okay, and hence the confusion, right?
The recordings were 71, but the release of the album was 72.
Yeah, okay, so hence the alternative release years on the internet. Some sources pointing out to 1971, whereas others pointing out to 1972.
Yeah,
I see.
But it was definitely 72.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a very, very important piece of information. And while we're still at the album proper, what can you tell us about your experience with the news regarding the commercial aftermath, so to put it, of it, namely the fact that there were only several hundred copies sold after, or put in circulation afterwards when it was officially released, and that most of them were reportedly lost in a flood or a fire, as you later on got to know yourselves. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, we were actually selling quite a lot of the albums directly ourselves. So we would call off supplies, if you like, from the record label, and we would sell them at shows, family, friends, all that kind of thing. And we didn't really know about the number that were held back. So I think the story goes that there were 500 initial prints made, pressings of the album.
That's what I read as well.
200, 250, and the other half was held back at the record, company.
Yeah.
And it was the company moved. It moved from this place, Cheadle Hulme, to a place in mid Wales. And I got a feeling it was at this place in mid Wales where the fate took a hand, and there'd been a fire, and then obviously the fire was put out by the fire brigade. So you had smoke damage, fire damage, and then you had water damage. But it wasn't just our albums; there were like master tapes, other record stock that was being held there. So quite a lot of people's material probably was lost at that time. And
unfortunately,
I think as time went on, some of this vinyl became incredibly collectible by
Indeed,
those avid
it
vinyl
became a
collectors.
rarity.
Yeah.
It became a rarity in its to the fullest extent possible. I mean, it's a very fine record, and among really hardcore hardcore folk fans, it was really a masterpiece that needed to be collected. So hence, the tremendous interest that was later on expressed with respect to it. And while we're still at Wales, it's very important to know the fact that it's a very wonderful land. It's a very wonderful region of the United Kingdom, but it's very rainy down there, and hence it's hence the flood is not that not that far off as a horrendous possibility for the demise of a studio album, like yours, unfortunately. So yeah, indeed. That was unfortunate. That was very unfortunate. But now we're moving on to the fifth question, and this is a rather wishful thinking based one and a very playful one. More specifically, on "Lovely Joan," your very beautiful song. Do you think John ever got the feeling of repentance, remorse towards Sir John? And if so, whatever happened to that golden ring? Thank you very much.
Right.
That's just speculation.
Yeah. I think there was no remorse whatsoever.
Okay.
Well, okay. Now let me just sort of give you my reasons and
Please.
what is with a lot of traditional folk songs. You get similar themes. You almost sometimes exactly the same lyrics, but with different melodies or different tunes. That is absolutely typical of folk music. And I think with Lovely Joan, there are other songs which are incredibly similar to this. And the characters are not real people. They're not literal people. The story is not literal.
Okay.
It's a kind of an allegory or, a little bit like a Bible story.
I see. So they're more like archetypes, right? Rather than real people, historical people.
That's right.
Even though they are based on, historical people or historical figures.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the story is set in, in the rural farmland.
Yeah, in medieval England, exactly.
Yeah. And Joan is working in the field. She's haymaking.
Yeah, exactly.
The guy on the horse is probably
a nobleman,
local gentry. Yeah, he's got money.
Yeah,
all this kind of thing.
And he's rather arrogant, and he looks down on women, actually.
Yeah.
That's
From
the naked
vantage
truth.
point of his horse.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's what we would call a false lover.
Exactly.
False lover.
Actually.
So he wants to lure her, for his, sort of sexual, endeavors, shall we say?
Yeah.
And she's got something in her own mind. She's got other ideas about this.
I see.
So you've got the chap who's trying to take advantage of her, and she obviously tells him a story that she's going to go and undress or something like this.
Yeah.
And but basically, she takes the ring from him, and whilst he's got his back turned, she gets on his horse and she rides away. She has a true love herself. So she's taking...
Oh, I see.
Yeah. She
I
has
see.
a true love. Yeah.
And
so
Sir John is not on the wish list by no stretch of that imagination.
So she plays the trick, and she takes the gold ring and the horse, never to be seen again. And there's a little saying that we have in English, that a fool and his money are easily parted.
Yeah, indeed. It applies in other cultures as well. Trust me.
Yeah. So I think the fool and his money, i.e. the ring and the horse, were easily parted. Yeah.
Indeed.
So, if it had been...
You can't buy love. You can't buy love in a nutshell. You can't. You just can't.
No, you can't. And as I say, if it had been real in medieval times, people used to get hanged, I should say.
Yeah.
For stealing horses, that kind of thing. So, but it's a story that tells a story with a morality, if you like, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't think that Joan actually
had any repentance whatsoever.
No.
Yeah.
She knew exactly what she was doing.
Exactly. I mean, you can't have a repentance over someone that arrogant, come to really think of it, you know.
Yeah.
And all the more, you know, I'm thinking, as a side note, I wonder what would J.R. Tolkien think about that golden ring. You know, if he would have had the, I mean, I'm certain he knew about this legend, right? And I wonder whether that would have been developed into a novel or a novel series as the Lord of the Rings series. Just, you know, just wishful thinking again. But it's fascinating indeed. And there are plenty of great lessons to learn from this particular song, indeed. Most notably on love and the fact that you can't buy me love. Just as in the title of a Robert Plant song, you can't buy me love. It's true.
Yeah.
Or Beatles song.
Again, there's if you listen to the lyrics of another song on the album, Anathea, that one is where the Anathea, her brother, has stolen a horse, and he's been held in jail, and he's going to be hanged for his crime, and she goes to the judge or the magistrate, and she's looking for clemency, and she offers her body to try and get clemency. So it's a story turned over, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other way around, yeah.
And it's very important to also know the fact that that specific song has reportedly Central European origins, so it's closer to
that's right,
where I am in Eastern Europe, where at the crossroads of Central and Eastern
yeah.
Europe. That's very, very important now. And an erratum on my behalf, it's actually You Can't Buy My Love by Robert Plant, which is an amazing song. Anyway, the listeners got the idea, and so we're now approaching the end of the interview with the sixth question, or the second part actually. How was it like to work with such talented, technical, gifted, and extraordinary folk musicians such as Bert Jansch or John Renbourn? That was during the post-Pentangle era, as you mentioned, of the record, of course. What can you tell us about your musical experiences with them? Thank you very much.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we've been involved in music promotion, providing sound equipment for touring artists and stuff like that. In addition to performing ourselves, and there were a series of gigs that were run in a small theatre, really small theatre above a public house, very close to where we live. So it's called the Alma Tavern Theatre, and a lot of the shows were kind of solo artists, and Bert Jansch and John Renbourn were amongst the many artists that played there as solo acts, and they were very humble people, really easy to get on with, and I mean they performed brilliantly, as you'd expect, and attracted good crowds. And strangely, I was talking to Mark about this, and when he was working at Button Guitars, the luthier, there was a pub somewhere close by to that shop, and there was a folk club being run there, and very often Mark would be involved in the organising of the folk club, and he said that they had John Renbourn sometimes, would play there, not exactly unannounced, but maybe if he'd been playing down in the extreme southwest of England, was making his way back up north, he would maybe stop off there because it broke up the travel, the journey. So he would do, maybe a gig for not a lot of money because it's kind of covered his accommodation for the night, that kind of thing. But they were really, really nice people to work with. No edge to them at all. No.
Yeah, indeed, very, very down to earth, downright dull people on a human level as well as on a musical level. You can clearly see that in concert in during the Pentangle era, and those recordings are really, really golden. And in this regard, while talking about the Pentangle, I'm thinking maybe you've also acquainted Jackie McShee, or maybe you had the intention to collaborate with her. Was that a possibility anyway? Thank you.
No, not really. I think Jackie McShee has done some stuff in relatively recent times with a kind of
with
Yeah,
British
and with
guitarist
one
Kevin
Pentangle, but
Dempsey.
it's not Pentangle, no. You know, it's Jackie McShee's own band, and they would play songs that had been made popular or famous, if you like, by Pentangle, but quite different. And of course, both John Renbourn and Bert Jansch died a few years back, 10 years or so ago now. So she's obviously been working since their deaths.
Yeah.
Which, and again, actually, I bet it's longer ago than 10 years that they died. But, it was a bit of a shock, actually, when we got news of their deaths.
Yeah.
But,
Bert Jansch passed away in early October 2011. And that was roughly 11 years ago. Well, 10 years and a half ago. So that's something indeed. And he was such an influential guitarist. I mean, he influenced, just as we previously talked of the record, the likes of Jimmy Page, Mike Oldfield, Paul Simon, Donovan, Neil Young, Nick Drake. I mean, he was a really, really monumental guitarist and performer. And unfortunately, he's not that well known. He didn't rose to the fame of the aforementioned, but he influenced all of the aforementioned to such a tremendous extent. And this is absolutely fantastic. And to have worked with him must have been indeed, as you mentioned, a really, really great experience.
Again, the thing is, it's not just what they play. They would tell some great stories, between songs or tunes. And I remember Renbourn actually saying something about when he and Bert Jansch were young and first in London. They were playing folk clubs, and they were trying anything, to try and get a record deal at the time. And they'd learned some jazz stuff. And he said, we weren't real jazz musicians. He said, but we learned it to be different to the other folk musicians that were kind of on the circuit.
Yeah.
And, they got it nailed. They really nailed it down. And, so they do these, well, he actually played it. And I've got a recording of it, a thing called Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, which is a jazz piece,
Yeah. I think I know it. I think I listened to it, of course. I mean, I've listened to most of the well-known Pentangle songs, and I've listened to a bit of Bert Jansch's solo career, most notably Jack Orion, which is one of the most finest folk albums ever released, and also The Hermit by John Renbourn. Very, very fine guitarists. I mean, it really, really, on a fan level, I can say that it's the way that they play guitar is absolutely unimaginable. They've built such a great technique, and they have so much. They had so much talent, and this is clearly displayed on their albums, that it's absolutely monumental to be even in their presence. I mean it. And you were definitely lucky from my point of view. It was definitely a brilliant experience that you had. And now we're approaching the last two questions of the interview, and I'm going to ask you the seventh one. More specifically, what are your musical plans for the future? Thank you very much.
Right, okay, well, I think current plans are to mix the audio tracks and the video recordings from the Folkal Point reunion concert. So, that's one thing. We were going to do some work on that right before the pandemic kicked in, and because of, where people were and everything that the restrictions.
It's been a lot of chaos lately, indeed, and on many levels of the society, if not on all levels of society globally.
So that is something that I've been speaking to Richard over at Hoxha, about getting onto that. Now that there's been a relaxation and stuff. The other thing
a relative one, at least.
Was that we'd recorded quite a lot of other material at BBC in Bristol, which would have been around about the same time as the Folkal Point album was
Mm-hmm.
recorded. Now, I've got more than an album's worth of that material available as well.
Wow.
So, so there's like certainly a couple of albums that we know that we can bring out.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that there's going to be any plans for, sort of a string of live performances or anything like that. I think we want to get this recorded material
done with,
available, tidied up and available,
mm-hmm.
and then see how the land lies then, as regards.
Absolutely, yeah. The future is always rather uncertain, and all the more during a pandemic, of course.
Yeah.
And they, what you said, those plans sound like really, really good ones for time being at least. And I really wish you much success and plenty of help to be able to do even more. And now for the last question, I'd like to ask you the following one. What would you transmit? What would you tell my audience or the listeners as an additional message in terms of what you want to express that you haven't had the possibility up until now? More specifically, what you would like to transmit them in addition to what was previously discussed on all levels, musically and not only.
Well, I think we'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and your listeners for their interest in Folkal Point. Because obviously you've taken the trouble to research it.
It wasn't a trouble, it was a blessing. It was a blessing, it was a true blessing. I mean it.
Yeah.
I mean it.
But this would be maybe very new, completely off the wall for some of your listeners.
Yeah.
But if they take an interest in it, then we thank them for that, obviously. Thanks for the exposure that you're giving to us in
Thank you very much for your availability and time and participation.
No, it's great to be able to do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'll try to get more of this previously unreleased material available.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what platforms we're going to do it on yet. We might do some sort of hard copy, but certainly I would imagine that we're going to have it available
on YouTube, of course.
Yeah,
most
YouTube,
notably.
And
Spotify, maybe. iTunes, of course. Yeah. You have a remastered version of your self-titled debut studio album on iTunes, right? What can you tell us about it?
Okay. So there was a reason for doing that, and the reason was to do with publishing and performance rights. Because obviously I told you that the original record label had become defunct, and it struck us that someone made it available as dig download that had absolutely nothing to do with us whatsoever, and certainly had not asked any permissions. So we set about doing the remastering and reissue of the original album, but we put an additional song on it. You remember I said that there were some previously unreleased songs that had been recorded. We included one onto that, so it would create what we call an identifier, because no one else would have had access to that song other than us. So basically, that was something that we'd done, and the whole reason, as I say, for doing that and to make it available, because it's registered with PRS and CD Baby, we've now got some control, if you like. We can't do anything about stuff that's been released, call it illegally or pirated before, but at least we can control it again now,
Yeah, I see. And you have all the rights for it. I mean, you were the creators of this great music, and you're bloody well right, just as to quote Supertramp, right? You're bloody well right in trying to control the rights of your own music. You're absolutely entitled to. Absolutely. Yeah.
Obviously, if it's a Joni Mitchell song or a Bob Dylan song, the publishing is with their own publishers. It's assigned to their publishers. It says so on the label.
Yes.
But of course, the thing is, it's all about the performance and any arrangements that we've made, which differ from the original. So it's our performance that needs to receive some royalties as well. And obviously these other entrepreneurs, we're not giving us any royalties.
Yeah.
Whereas now,
to softly call them as such, entrepreneurs. Very well pointed out indeed. Yeah. Well, thank you very much once again for your time, availability, and participation. And may sweet Sir Galahad be with you and guide your musical roads boldly and wisely, along with the guiding spirit of Merlin, of wise Merlin.
Yeah.
And thank you very much, and I truly hope for all the best for you, much health.
Yeah,
and
best wishes to you.
Thank you.
Best wishes to you and your
Thank
listeners.
you very much, and keep up the excellent work with your brilliant musicians. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Thanks, Victor.
Have an excellent day. You've just listened to Let's Get Rocked with presenter Victor Rouă. Thank you very much for your attention. All the best.